Hello and a very good day. My name is Abhilash and I am from the AD Solutions team here at Manage Engine, and I would be your presenter for today. Now, before we actually go ahead and jump into today's webinar and see what we have in store for us, I would like to thank all of you for joining in. Thank you so much for taking out the time. I know these are troubled times. I hope all of you are healthy and safe. Now, before we actually go ahead and jump into today's webinar, I would like to run a quick audio and a video check because I want to make sure that everybody out here today is able to hear me and is able to see the screen well. So I'll just start off with a quick audio check. If you can hear my voice, if my voice is well and audible without any distortion, please punch in yes via the chat box. Using the chat box that you see in front of you, if you could say yes, if you could confirm that my voice is reaching you well and clear, I can happily take the webinar forward. Thank you so much, Clyde. Thank you so much, Michael. If you can see the screen, which is the title, my name, and my email, could you just give me another confirmation, please? Just to make sure that the video is well and clear to you. Just waiting on some confirmations on the video before I proceed. Thank you so much, Michael. You've been really helpful. All right, perfect. Now, before I get started, I would like to tell you that the entire session today, the entire webinar is being recorded, and the recorded session would be sent to you via email post the webinar. So if you've got any questions at all, please keep them coming in via the chat box in front of you, and I promise to take them when the webinar is done. And even if I miss taking your questions, please do not worry. I will get back to you via your email. So if you have any questions, feel free to keep dropping them via chat, and I'll take them as soon as the webinar is done. So perfect. Today's webinar's topic is the search for the perfect password. Will it ever end? Now, why did I choose to speak about this topic today? Why are we circling back to passwords all over again? Now, it's no secret that passwords have been around for a long time. Passwords have been the prime mode of authentication from decades now. But still, when we talk about password security and when we talk about password management in an organization, we still feel a chill on our spine, right? We still feel a trickle of fear. Why is this the case? For passwords, for something that has been for so long, we should have figured out how to handle passwords. We should have figured out how to secure passwords. But why are we still suffering? Why are we still dealing with the problem of password security and password management? Verizon Data Breach Investigations report found that 81% breaches in 2019 were due to stolen or weak passwords. Microsoft's threat team analyzed a database of 3 billion accounts, right, and found that 44 million users inside of those 3 billion accounts used breached passwords as their main passwords. Right, these are passwords that were either breached or exposed in breaches, and these users, the 44 million users, used those breached passwords. LastPass found that password reuse has increased by 13 times in 2019. So why are we still suffering with the password problem? It's been so long. We should have figured out the know-how. We should have figured out the tips and tricks to not face the password problem, to solve the issue of password security. Over the years, we have employed various tips and techniques, right? We have heard our system administrators, we have heard our cybersecurity experts, we have heard security professionals around the globe often stress on the importance of creating and using strong user passwords. Tips and tricks we may have read about and techniques we may have employed to ensure password strength within our organization, but why do weak passwords still exist? When we entrust our users to manage or handle their passwords on their own, users often create weak passwords, or users create a password and reuse it across multiple logons. When we enforce strict password complexity within an organization, right, users often take the password and note it down in their notepad, or use a sticky note to stick it on their computer, or save it in a notes application on their laptops. And it's no secret that with custom applications, logons have increased, passwords have increased, and the number of opportunities for an attacker has increased. It's just not on-prem anymore. Earlier, we used to suffer with passwords just with on-prem, but now there are a multitude of custom applications that have been included. So it is imperative to strengthen passwords across every mode of logon. So let's go ahead and jump into today's agenda. Let's go ahead and see the changing face of cyber attacks in 2020. By this I mean the future predictions of cyber attacks in 2020. How are cyber attacks going to turn out in 2020? We know about password attacks, right? I'm sure we have read about it, or we have probably heard the news about different kinds of password attacks. Let's go ahead and see what the future has in store for us. In the second part of today's webinar, let's see the current scenario, the current infrastructure style, or the current IT configuration of most organizations. The third part of today's webinar is going to be a fun activity where I would be performing a live security attack. That's right, this is going to be a live password attack, and the reason I'm doing this is just to prove my earlier point. No matter what measures we employ, no matter what we do using the native solutions, passwords can still be broken. In the fourth part of today's webinar, let's go ahead and try to solve the outstanding password problem, the everlasting password problems, where we will take a two-step approach, where first we will see how to solve the password problems, or if solving password issues using the native solutions is possible. If not, we will see the limitations around the native solutions, and finally, we will see how AD Self-Service Plus can be leveraged to solve password issues within our organizations. So the changing face of cyber attacks, the future predictions of cyber attacks in 2020, what do we have in store? Gartner predicts that small and medium-sized businesses will be a bigger targets for cyber criminals in 2020. Now, when it comes to attacks or cyber attackers, there are some mistakes that we make. Two of the major mistakes include, number one, that I will never get breached. Right? That is a major mistake that we always make. We think that attackers only want to target the top-notch or the celebrity companies, and we think that attackers will never touch us. But that's totally untrue, because hackers are now planning to target the small and the medium-sized businesses for very obvious reasons: lesser infrastructure security than the top-notch or the celebrity companies. And when I say attacker or a hacker or an intruder, we always think of a person with exceptional coding skills or exceptional technical knowledge sitting outside the network perimeter trying to break the strongest of security protocols. But the truth is, anybody can be an attacker. Yes, your users within your organization, or a harmless looking employee could be an attacker, and we need to be prepared. So 3 predicted attack trends the way forward. Number one, we've got custom application DDoS. Like I said, it's just not on-prem anymore. We have a multitude of cloud-hosted applications. Right? So attackers haven't failed to notice this as well. Attackers are now targeting custom applications or third-party applications within an organization. All they need to look for is one small vulnerability, and that's it. They will exploit that vulnerability to gain internal access to your organization's network. The second attack trend predicted is ransomware. Now, according to research, ransomware was found to have increased by 118% just in the year of 2019. Right? And similarly, the predicted attack trend states that ransomware will still be on the rise now. And last but not the least, we have misuse of a platform's intended functionality. Gone are the times where attackers used to use USB sticks or malicious attachments to perform attacks. Tools built into your systems, tools that come with your operating systems, are now being exploited for malicious use. Thereby, attacks are now less detectable than what they were before. A good example for this can be PowerShell or command prompt. PowerShell is being increasingly leveraged as a malicious tool by attackers because PowerShell is Microsoft tool, right? PowerShell gives you untethered access. PowerShell gives you access to the restricted APIs, and attackers need just that. Why not leverage a built-in tool to carry out attacks instead of downloading a tool or sticking in a USB drive or a flash drive, which can easily be detected these days? So the whole definition of a hack or an attack is broadening, right? And foresight is extremely important at times such as this. So this is the current scenario in most organizations, right? It's just not Active Directory, or it's just not on-prem anymore. We have an array of cloud-hosted applications. As you can see here, we've got on-prem Active Directory, and we've got Azure Active Directory for organizations who use Office 365 or organizations who use just Azure Active Directory. We've got our on-prem applications that use on-prem authentication for access, and we have our custom applications as well. For instance, G Suite, Dropbox, ServiceNow, Zendesk. And adding on to this, we have multiple devices. It's just not a laptop anymore. We've got our smartphones, we've got our tablets. A survey conducted by LastPass states that smaller businesses, right, have 85 average passwords per employee. And the larger companies, of course, have an average of 25 passwords per employee. Now, these may look significantly different, right? 85 and 25, but take my word for it, any organization that has employees remembering more than 10 passwords, there is some kind of password writing down or password storing on a piece of paper or password storing on a notepad or a sticky note is happening. Right? When users have to remember multiple passwords, they will either use weak passwords, they will reuse passwords, or they will write them down and keep it somewhere for easy recollection. Passwords in use are likely to increase by 300 billion in 2020. This is not random facts that I'm stating. This was a research conducted by Yubico. Yubico Authenticators is the company that makes authenticator keys for most systems. So let's go ahead and get on to the fun activity where we would be performing a live Office 365 password attack. So this is how the attack would work, right? So if I quickly head on to my VM, you can now see that this is my VM, right? And if I quickly open up PowerShell, here we go, a built-in tool, like I said earlier, that is being misused now. All right, and let me quickly increase the size of the font so it's easily visible for you. Perfect, here we go. Now, you can see that I've logged in as a user called Ross. Right now, if I run a command called netuser Ross, this is what we get. Right, these are Ross's group memberships. Now, Active Directory tells me that Ross is not a privileged user of any kind, neither an administrator, nor a member of any privileged group. Ross is just a regular domain user logging on to his domain join system that has access to internet. A pretty normal scenario in most organizations, right? So in order to perform the attack, I will be using a script that I made in with my developers within my organization. So this is a simple script that we hatched up together. Right, so the script basically takes a list of passwords from a password list file that you can see right here. Now you could give in how many passwords you want, but in order to save time, I've given 4 predictable or commonly used passwords. QWERTY123, password at 123, admin at 123, and test at 123. So this is the script, right? So it basically tests one password after the other on the account right here. Now, the details of this account can easily be found using PowerShell. All you need to do is use PowerShell, find out what the Office 365 account's username is. And passwords, well, we have the brute force attack for that. Right? So without further ado, let me quickly open up PowerShell. And before I get started, I will need to copy the path of the script that you see right here. So I head into Properties, Security, and I will simply copy the path. This is a straightforward attack, ladies and gentlemen. Just reiterating my point that I said earlier, attackers needn't be knowledgeable. Attackers needn't have technical knowledge. All they need is Google, find a malicious script, and use that script using a built-in tool such as PowerShell to perform an attack. That's how sophisticated and that's how straightforward attacks have gotten these days. So here we go. Once I click enter, all right, let me quickly shift to the desktop, clear this, and key in the same command again, right? That's and the path of the script, which will basically execute the script. Once I click enter, you can now see that the brute force attempt has started. Trying password QWERTY123 on my Office 365 login page, right? Or in this case, Outlook, which is a part of Office 365. Attempt 2, trying password at 123. You can see here that it says access is denied, right? Which means the password is wrong. Trying password admin at 123. Now I've chosen predictable passwords, commonly used passwords in your organization, right? You would know best which password is commonly used in your organization. It could be company at 123, right? So access is denied for admin at 123, but for test at 123, we never got an access denied message. Now, granted that the script is not pretty, but it does the job, right? We have the user's password right in front of us. Let me quickly prove this to you. If I head on to my VM right here, here's the name of the user, hit sign in. All right, looks like it's auto signed in. Let me quickly sign out and sign back in as the user. Here we go. Login Office 365, right? And once I click enter, Office 365 login page, sign in. Let me quickly copy the path of the account that we have right here. I mean the username of the account. Here we go, Control C, Control V, next, and the password that we found, which is test at 123. And once I click sign in, voila, here we are, right? We have gotten access to an Office 365 administrator's account just by leveraging a built-in tool that comes in with almost every Windows system these days. So we saw that the problem is still there, right? And with the introduction of cloud applications, the problem has only increased. The problem has worsened, and we need to find a solution to the problem of password security and password management in our organization. So how do we go about doing that? Let's go ahead and see what the native solutions offer. So there are three things that we look up to when we set passwords using the native solutions. Right? We've got the native password policies, the Active Directory password policies. Now these policies, right, typically work like this. So if I head onto my VM and if I open up my GPO setting right here, do you see these 6 settings? I'm sure you'd have seen them before as well, but these 6 settings determine the strength of passwords within your organization. Right? These 6 settings are all you need to create and to manage passwords within your organization. right? But the problem is these 6 settings, the settings that you see right here, have been the same since Windows Server 2000. It's been more than 15 years now, but we are still using the same old 6 settings to create passwords. And the problem with the Active Directory's password policy is that it applies on the default domain node, right? So every user, your privileged user, your sensitive users, your standard users with no privileges whatsoever, have the same password policy applied. So how do you set different password policies? A very clear example can be if you want your privileged users to have stricter password policies than your standard user with no privileges, how would you do that? Now that's when Microsoft actually heard our problems, and they came up with something called fine-grained password policies, or password settings object to be more precise. Now fine-grained password policies again use the same old 6 settings, the settings that are a decade old. Right, now I can go on and on about the problems with native password policies, but the truth of the matter is that when something has been around for so long, attackers will eventually find a way around it, and that's exactly what happened with Active Directory's password policy. There have been brute force attacks, there have been password spray attacks, there have been pass the hash attacks or dictionary attacks, just because these settings have been around for too long. Next up, we have Azure AD password protection. Azure AD password protection is Microsoft's latest attempt to protect our organization from weak or vulnerable passwords. So how does Azure AD password protection work? Azure AD password protection uses a custom banned list, right? There's an undisclosed banned list of 1,000 passwords that is used by Azure AD password protection to detect and ban weak passwords within your organization. What are those 1,000 passwords? Nobody knows. Microsoft never revealed the set of 1,000 passwords, and the icing on the cake here is that those 1,000 passwords are subject to change anytime. The problem with Azure AD's password protection is that you will need a premium license, which can cost up to $6 to $9 every month. And the most fundamental issue here is that if you do not have Azure AD, or if you do not use Azure AD within your organization, you cannot use the advanced password protection. So at the core of it, this is Azure AD's password protection algorithm. Right, so let me just brief you on this. Every character, every word that is banned in Azure AD's password protection, every weak password or every weak banned password takes up a point, and every unique character or every unique password takes up a point. Right, so in this case, there are 2 weak passwords, that Contoso and blank. That's 2 points. We've got 1 and 2, which is 2 unique characters, so that's 2 points for them. And if the total is 4, right, or less than 4, or less than 5, the password would be rejected. And if the total is 5 or more than 5, the password would be accepted. Now see how easy it is to bypass Azure AD's password protection algorithm. So I will take the same password right here and just add an exclamation. Right, so that's 2 points for 2 weak passwords, 3 points for 3 unique characters. That's 1, 2, and exclamation, and here we have a password accepted. Now this algorithm is what Azure AD password protection operates on, and it's so easy to bypass it. And this algorithm, along with the custom banned list that I spoke earlier about, are subject to change anytime. Last but not the least, we have our custom app password guidelines. Now this sounds like jargon, but at the core of it, all I mean is every application has its own set of password policy rules or password guidelines or password recommendations. Right, so there are different password policy rules across different applications, which can confuse the end user. Now put yourself in the shoes of an end user, right? When you are asked to create passwords using different password rules across different applications, you tend to get frustrated. What do you do then? You will create weak passwords, or you will simply use one password, or basically reuse passwords across multiple logons. Not just to the end users, this becomes extremely frustrating for your administrators as well, because your administrators or your help desk technicians will have to sit back and ensure that strong passwords are being used across these various password policy requirements across multiple applications. And there's of course the risk that these applications may allow users to get away with a weak password, like test at 123 like we saw earlier, or password at 123. So we've got native, we've got Azure AD password protection, we've got custom app password guidelines, and all three of them come in with their own set of problems, which is why the password issue, the password security issue, is still present. So how do we go about solving this problem, right? Let's go ahead and employ a step-by-step process. Right, this is going to be a very straightforward process. Number one, we will find the weak passwords that are being used on our in-house or on-prem environment. Number two, we will secure our passwords across on-prem Active Directory and applications that are authenticated and authorized by Active Directory, basically your traditional on-prem applications. And finally, we will also look to the cloud or the hybrid environment, and we will sort the passwords. We will strengthen passwords across every mode of logon. Number one, identifying weak passwords. Right now, before I get into the tool that is shown right in front of the screen, let me tell you how to do this in native Active Directory. Right, this can be done in Active Directory using PowerShell. Right, but the catch here is that you will need to take a list of passwords that you think are weak and that you think are being constantly used within your organization. You will need to convert them into their respective NT hashes. You will need to query for the NT hashes from Active Directory, and you will need to compare both, and if they match, then the password used is weak. Right, before I get into more details of this, let me tell you that this entire process must be done using PowerShell, and yes, you will need scripting. Now that's when we saw this problem, because honestly, nobody has the time to sit and convert each password to its respective hash and compare them using scripting. So we made a tool. Right now, this is a free weak password reporter tool. Again, this is freely available online. All you have to do is head on to the source link present here, download it, and you are good to go. This is how the tool works. Right, so you give in your domain name, your domain controller's name, and admin's credentials, and it will push out all users with weak passwords within your organization. Now you may ask me a question, where does this tool pick the passwords from? The tool in its directory folder has a file called passwordpatterns.txt. These are about 1 lakh passwords that you can potentially use to check the password strength within your organization. You could add in your own passwords to this list as well, your company specific weak passwords, or you could simply specify another file if you wish to. Right, so this tool basically automates the entire process. It takes the passwords that you specified in your notepad file, automatically converts them to the NT hashes, takes passwords from Active Directory, the NT hashes from the Unicode password attribute from Active Directory, compares both, and if they match, you have the results in front of you. Now that we found our users with weak passwords just in our on-prem environment, the next step is to strengthen them. Right, so how do we go about strengthening passwords? Because using the native password policy solution doesn't seem as feasible, right? We just spoke about it. So how do we actually go about strengthening passwords? AD Self-Service Plus can help you with that. For those of you who do not know what AD Self-Service Plus is, a quick recap: AD Self-Service Plus is an end-user self-service solution using which your end users can basically reset or unlock their own accounts, right? Reset their own passwords, change their passwords, and also self-update personal data. Your users can have one-click access using single sign-on with an AD Self-Service Plus. Your admins can ensure password security using stronger password policies. That brings me to my next point. We need to secure passwords using stronger password policies. Now you may ask me a question, hey, why don't we take in the old password policy and why don't we set the strictest parameters in the world? Will that work? My answer to that question is no, because you need password policy rules. You need rules now that are in accordance with today's cybersecurity requirements. right? You cannot go back to using the age-old password policy rules. You need something that can help you protect against such password attacks. A good example is a password policy that can detect the usage of weak patterns like password at 123 or QWERTY at 123. So let me quickly head into AD Self-Service Plus, and if I log in as the administrator, here we go, logging in as the admin, head into configuration. This is what we have, right? So AD Self-Service Plus works on the basis of policies. Now, policies in AD Self-Service Plus can be used to delegate self-service activities to your end users. For instance, you can give your end users the ability to reset their own passwords, unlock their own accounts, or self-update their personal data, right? And using policies in AD Self-Service Plus, you can delegate specific activities based on OUs, groups, and individual users. So we were on the point of password strengthening, right, and stronger password policies. So in order to do that, we need to head into Password Policy Enforcer right here. Now, Password Policy Enforcer can help you enforce password rules that will ensure password strength within your organization. The enforcer works on the basis of policies created within AD Self-Service Plus, and just to recap, policies can be applied based on OUs, groups, and individual users. All you have to do is simply check the box, specify the rules that you want, and you are good to go. Now, I would encourage you to specify the rules that are needed for your organization, that are required by your organization, because not all organizations can have a similar password policy structure. It will differ based on the passwords used within your organization, based on the security status of your organization. For instance, we have settings such as specifying the minimum password length, right? Banning the use of passwords from older usernames or older passwords, disallowing the use of dictionary words. So if I quickly head into the notepad file, you can see that I have a default dictionary.txt right here. That is basically all the dictionary words used within AD Self-Service Plus to block the usage of these words as passwords by the end users. Right now, of course, you can add in words to this or specify different sets of dictionaries as well. Disallow the use of certain patterns, for instance, password at 123 or test at 123 in this case, right? And number of old passwords to be restricted during password reset. Let me show you a quick experiment, right? If I quickly sign out of my system right here and sign back in as an administrator onto my DC. So that's going to be administrator, and keying in the administrator's password. Here we go, we have now logged in. Without further ado, let me show you a quick experiment. Right, so this is the ADUC tool that we all know of, the infamous ADUC tool. So let me head into my OU right here. Right, let me select a user, let's say George right here. So I will right click on George and click on reset password. So I will give in a password, right? Let's say password at 123. Password at 123, and once I click OK, you can see that the password for George has been reset. Let me do that again for George. Reset password, password at 123, password at 123, and once I click OK, you can see that the password has been reset again. Right, so the point I'm trying to prove here is using the ADUC tool, or Native Active Directory tool in this case, you can reset passwords for your users. Right, you can reset passwords wherein you can use predictable and common passwords, and you can reuse these passwords across the same account or multiple accounts, and Active Directory does not raise this as a security threat. Now imagine, as an administrator, if I reset passwords for 5 users in a day and all of them is password at 123, imagine how easy it is for an attacker sniffing on the network to perform a password attack or a brute force attack like we did earlier and get access to those accounts who had their password reset. So using AD Self-Service Plus, if I go ahead and right click on Pete right here, hit reset password, and given a password that is password at 123. Password at 123. And once I click OK, you can now see that Active Directory has banned me from using the password, has disallowed the password reset. Now that happened because we have enforced the policy on the native side of Active Directory as well. Meaning when an admin resets the password using the ADUC tool, or when an end user decides to change his or her password. Right, so let me quickly show you a quick example right here. This is my DC. Right, I head into console and let me log in as a user called Brittany right here. So Brittany is my user, right? Just logging on to her domain join system, nothing complex happening here. Password at 123. Brittany's password has expired and must be changed. And once I click OK, you can now see that the password policies that we have set within AD Self-Service Plus come into action here. So this is two-way protection when an admin resets a password for a user, and also when a user changes his or her password. Right, so what we've basically done here is we have strengthened passwords. We have ensured the creation and usage of strong passwords by treating the root of the problem, which is the password policies. We have implemented stronger password policies, right? And when a user decides to use weak passwords, the next time he or she changes a password, the password policies will kick in and will not allow the user to proceed with the password change. So this secures access to native Active Directory or our on-prem infrastructure, and also applications that are authenticated and authorized by our on-prem Active Directory. Right? For example, applications such as Exchange and SQL databases, these are all authorized by Active Directory. So that's step one, securing passwords on our native and on our on-prem applications that are authenticated and authorized by our native logon. Like I said, this works on the native end as well, meaning when the user changes a password, or when the admin resets the user's password. And also AD Self-Service Plus can now integrate with Have I Been Pawned. I'm sure you would have heard of this, right? Have I Been Pawned is a website by security researcher Troy Hunt. So what the website basically does is it helps you figure out if your passwords, right, for your accounts have ever been exposed in breaches that have occurred in earlier times. And by integrating AD Self-Service Plus with Have I Been Pawned, you can ensure that breached passwords or exposed passwords are never used within your organization. So that is step one, strengthening passwords on our native end and our native applications. What happens to our hybrid applications? What happens to applications such as Office 365 or Salesforce or Zendesk or Dropbox? What happens to applications such as that? So in order to strengthen passwords across all logons, right, across every application, we will need single sign-on in AD Self-Service Plus. So this is the logic I'm trying to put forth here, right? So if I head into AD Self-Service Plus and quickly head into password sync/single sign-on. Right, so these are applications that are supported by single sign-on. At present, we support about 110 applications. And if you have a custom application that is being used within your organization, you can simply click on New Custom Application and link that with AD Self-Service Plus as well. So if I quickly click on Office 365 right here, click on Edit, you can see now single sign-on has been configured for my Office 365 environment. And how does single sign-on apply? Based on policies again. I repeat, policies can be applied based on your users, groups, and OUs, the policies that we configured right here. But just a few steps and we are ready with single sign-on. This is how it would work, right? If I head on to my domain right here and here we go. I've logged in as a user called Brad. Right now, Brad is a user in my organization who has access to Office 365. So now I will quickly just enter the URL of where AD Self-Service Plus is hosted. And you can see now that Brad is trying to log in, but Brad was never asked the password, right? Because the authentication was already done at native Active Directory logons. That's all Brad had to do. Log on once to the domain, and that's it. Seamless access to all cloud applications. Now, there are two ways Brad can access the cloud application. One, by entering the AD Self-Service Plus application, using which he's auto-logged on because of single sign-on that is implemented. Head into applications, simply click the application, and Brad would log on to that particular application. Right? Or if Brad decides to access AD Self-Service Plus directly using the cloud application's URL, AD Self-Service Plus would still automatically authenticate and authorize the user using the SSO configuration that we have set up, and the user would be automatically logged in to the third-party application as well. Right? So that's two-way road again, either using AD Self-Service Plus, where the user can log in, head into applications, and click to access, or via the URL of the application directly. For instance, Office 365 loginportal.com. Right? AD Self-Service Plus would automate the entire process of logging in because we have implemented single sign-on, and the authentication was done at native Active Directory logon. So the whole point here is that with single sign-on, we have made native Active Directory logon a single point of security. Right? We have pushed all logons across applications to Active Directory, making Active Directory logon the identity provider. So once authentication is done at Active Directory logon, or once authentication is done at the on-prem infrastructure, that's it. Users will have untethered access to all cloud applications. So a quick summary of what we saw today. Right? We saw that the search for the perfect password is still ongoing despite of various tips and tricks or various solutions that we have employed. And then we saw the limitations that come in with the native solutions. And in order to solve this, we employed a structured approach, where first we detected weak passwords on our on-prem infrastructure, post which we strengthened passwords across our on-prem environment using stronger password policies within AD Self-Service Plus, but at the same time, logins across our on-prem applications as well. For instance, Exchange, SQL databases, and more. Finally, to ensure that strong passwords are used across multiple logons, right? And to basically enhance the process for the end user, right? To give more convenience to the end user, we set up single sign-on. So now we are ensuring strong passwords are being used with AD Self-Service Plus' password policy enforcer, and we have enforced this policy not only across on-prem, but also across the cloud, right, with single sign-on in AD Self-Service Plus. Are we done yet? Have we finally addressed the everlasting problem of passwords? We have just one more step. We need to ensure security beyond passwords. That's right. Using a standard username password combination in times such as this will not cut it. We need to ensure security beyond the standard username password combination. We need an extra layer of protection. Right? So we need two-factor authentication. So let me quickly head into AD Self-Service Plus right here and show you something. Right? If I head into configuration, we have something called multi-factor authentication right here. Now there are about 13 to 14 multi-factor authentication methods right here. So you have a method for all of your users. If your users belong to the older generation, if they wish to use email or SMS, if they are old school, you can set that up for your users. If your users are young and tech savvy, you can set up Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator or TOTP based authentication for your more technologically forward or tech savvy users. Right? So there is a method for everyone, and like always, multi-factor authentication works on the basis of policies in AD Self-Service Plus. Right? Now policies again can be applied based on OUs and on groups. Right here, as you can see. let me show you a quick example that I made up yesterday. So this is how it would work, right? As an end user, I'm logging onto my domain join system. And once I click enter, you can now see that the two-factor authentication process has kicked in, wherein I would receive a message on my mobile, right, on my smartphone. And once I accept the authentication, only then will I be allowed to log onto the domain. And the key here is because we have implemented single sign-on, that's all we have to do, right? So the end result here is one-time password entering, right? One time entering a password, one-time two-factor authentication, and that is it. That is all your user needs to do. So what we've done here is we've handled security, we've handled password security, we've handled security across multiple logons within our environment by using stronger password policies and single sign-on, but at the same time, we are providing convenience to the end user. The user does not have to log in multiple times into multiple applications. They walk in on a Monday morning to work, authenticate themselves once, and that is it, because single sign-on is already been set up. Now, before I end today's webinar, I will be pushing out 2 quick polls that come in, right? So you will see 2 questions flash across your screen, and your feedback would be highly helpful, right? So just bear with me while I punch in the first question. You will see a quick question flash across your screen, and if you can help me out by answering the question, it would be really great. Thank you so much for your responses. Just another poll, and I promise I will be out of your hair. Thank you so much for your responses. All right, so I will be here for the next 10 to 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can keep them coming via the chat box. Or if you get questions later on, you can always drop an email to me at abi@manageengine.com, and I would be more than happy to help you out. I hope today's webinar was informative. You guys have been a great audience, and have a wonderful, wonderful day ahead.